Welcome to The Myth of Motherhood, a podcast by, for, and about moms and those who love them. I don't believe in TMI, and this is a 100% judgment-free zone because there is no one right way to be a mother. There is only your right way. I'm your host, Alyssa Alter, a Brooklyn-based mom, women's health expert, and motherhood advocate. Curious to learn more about what I do and why I do it? Visit alyssa-alter.com. All right, let's get this myth-busting party started. So, today's episode is inspired by you. I want to thank you to everyone who has reached out to me over the past, I guess if I'm 7 months pregnant at this point, so over the past 6 months, because maybe for the first 4 weeks I didn't say anything. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. I think I didn't feel sick yet, so it didn't really feel real. So I hadn't really accepted that I was pregnant again. But if you are in my sphere, if you follow me on Instagram, if you're on my email list, you know that I started talking about this pregnancy early because I was miserable, and I have made a vow that I don't suffer in silence. I suffer out loud only. And I want to thank you to everyone and anyone who reached out to me about it with such kind words. And really, I felt so seen in that, so many of you recognized that must have been a difficult decision for me to get pregnant again after such a traumatic experience. And I'm not using trauma in the very we're using trauma a lot, which I don't think is wrong. I just think sometimes we can forget what it means. But I really, the trauma that I experienced and getting pregnant again, just moving towards that took a lot. So in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you a bit of why that was so complicated to even make the decision to be comfortable getting pregnant again, to even consider it and then do it, and how I did that and what that's been like and where we're at. So, I might cry. I might not. I don't know. When I was taking notes to prepare for this episode, I definitely cried, which felt really good. So I don't know, maybe this episode is one of those ones that is on that line of maybe should have just stayed in journal entry, or maybe this is exactly why it shouldn't just stay in journal entry and should just be publicly available on all podcasting platforms and YouTube, because why not, right? As I said, I only suffer out loud now. Okay, so stick with me. There's always a method to the madness, but we're going back. As I told Jeremy at the beginning of our relationship, and I met him in 2016, I wanted a minimum of 2 children. This was my one deal breaker. Jeremy and I had gotten to the point in our relationship where we were talking about what we wanted for our futures. Would I ever leave Greenwich Village? Would I even consider moving to Brooklyn? Would he think about moving back into Manhattan? Do we ever see ourselves in a house in the suburbs, which feels very meta and very funny at this point because as I record this episode, I am in our new house in the suburbs. So I guess we both were open to it, which actually that was part of the conversation. Anyway, how did I feel about marriage in general after having been married? How did he feel about marriage? How did I feel about children? How did he feel about children? So we were very aligned on everything, really, until we got to that last point, children. Maybe a little bit started on the marriage conversation because for me, after my experience in my first marriage and the process of realizing it wasn't a marriage or a partnership, and I wanted out and then filing for and going through a divorce, I knew that paperwork does not a relationship make. I didn't feel a need to get married again, to change my name, all of that stuff. But I did feel a need for a committed long-term relationship. I wanted a marriage, but I understood that the paperwork isn't what makes a marriage legit. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd signed the paperwork before the contract, and that didn't make a marriage. I know that they're not mutually exclusive, right? So like the paperwork doesn't make a marriage. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm going to stop saying it 100 million times, but I wanted the marriage, which is the commitment between the two people, and a minimum of 2 children, with or without the paperwork. I made that clear. I don't need to be legally married to have children with you. That's, if we are really committed to each other, that's the commitment. We are married. We got married before we had kids. That was something we then decided on. But anyway, that's not, okay, this is where we are in the story, okay? So then Jeremy shared that he wanted 0 to 1 children. I think he may have even said something more along the lines of, I don't know that I want children. And in that moment, my life flashed before my eyes. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I really, like, the blood drained from my face. I can I feel like hot tears burned my eyeballs. And I repeated this back to him. You don't know if you want children. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. And I realized that this was huge. This simple statement, a very important conversation for 2 people in their early 30s who are starting to date seriously. This is an important conversation to have. And this conversation was suddenly about to ruin everything. Because after my first date with Jeremy, I literally called my best friend to tell her this is something special. I said, I have no idea what this is or what it will be or where it will go, but I know that this is important. This is going to be really, really important and really big. I knew how special Jeremy is the moment I saw him. Like, I remember seeing him for the first time, and while I can't describe it, like what it was, I can still feel that feeling in my body. And all of that was about to fall apart. And here's why. My divorce, when I got divorced, it wasn't because of one big thing. Like, there wasn't like someone cheated. Nobody hit anybody. There wasn't one event that ended things. It was a result of many things, big and small, that became more and more important and more toxic and insidious, that contributed to the end of everything. And for me, a huge component of that was realizing that I could not have children with him. I couldn't be the sole provider for our family. We can talk about that more another day if you want to, if you don't know that part of my story. And what it really was I couldn't bring someone else into this dysfunctional, emotionally abusive, and manipulative environment that our relationship had become. Maybe it had always been, maybe it had become over time, unclear. But one of the reasons I ended that marriage was on behalf of my future children, my future family, the family I literally could not wait to start with Jeremy, because it's not just that I wanted children, which I did. That was one of my deal breakers. I want a minimum of 2 children. But even more than that, I want Jeremy's children. Now, I usually cry when I say this, so this might be one of the times that I cry, but maybe I'll be okay, right? And if I do cry, that's fine. This is a safe place, right? But Jeremy is such a special human and such an incredible man that I really think the world is better and will be better now with 2 more men raised by him. And listen, maybe these babies aren't men. Everett will let me know who he is as he gets older. And this baby in my belly, where the sex is male, this baby will let me know who he is over time. I am open to that. But still, these babies born with presenting male, right, and being seen that way in the world, being raised by Jeremy, whose superpower is his gentleness, his gentle strength, his sensitivity, his awareness, his steadfast, dependable, open nature is exactly what we need. And I like, I feel so lucky that I get to be a part of this. I mean, I'm a pretty central figure because I'm like making these people with my body, but that I get to like facilitate more people like Jeremy. Like I can't. So and I mean, now we've been together, I guess we're approaching 7 years, but like, I knew this about him from the beginning. I recognized this in him. And so when he told me that he didn't know if he wanted kids, and if he did, he wanted 0 to 1, I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. I tried to stay calm, and I'm sure my voice was shaking as I explained to him that this was my one deal breaker. That I could move to Brooklyn, I could move back to New Jersey or wherever. I could get Chinese food when what I really wanted was Greek or whatever else, but I'm going to have a minimum of 2 children, and I would become a mother however it needed to happen, extraordinary measures or not. I told him about how that was a big part of my divorce, and that I had a lot of fear about becoming single again in my 30s, was that I wouldn't meet someone for a really long time and then I'd like, quote unquote, miss the window of having children. And I know that that's not true, and we have so much time, but I also know that any woman listening to this who was or is single in her 30s and wants children knows exactly what I'm talking about. Not that I am in support of this narrative, and we feel it. So when Jeremy and I were having this conversation, I excused myself to the bathroom so I could cry privately. And I'm fairly certain that Jeremy shed a tear or two in the living room while I was gone, because we could both feel that we were risking losing each other. We decided to table the conversation as I didn't need or want an answer in that moment, because I explained to him that I didn't want him to say he wanted kids for my benefit, or worse yet, move forward and have kids with me and then resent me forever because he never really wanted him. That this was something to think about and to let me know. We didn't give like an exact time frame because this is obviously like a huge life decision. But I also was clear with him that I wasn't going to wait forever. And that if he didn't want to have kids, this wasn't going to work. I had had the experience through my divorce to know my deal breakers, to know with such clarity what I wanted and what really were things I could compromise on and things I couldn't, and to not apologize for that. I fought too hard to have the life that I want, to then not have the life that I want, right? And I was clear because, listen, this is right on that line, that this wasn't an ultimatum. Ultimatum. Why do I feel like I'm saying that word wrong? I know I'm not. But it wasn't an ultimatum. This was me knowing my deal breakers, me knowing and honoring myself, and that I deserve to build and live the life that I have always dreamed of. So, I don't have to walk you through every step of the process because I'm sitting here recording this pregnant with our second child, which on many accounts feels like a miracle. Not because we had fertility struggles, but because the man who wanted 0 to 1 kids knocked me up with a second child. And all of this happened after we together experienced intense birth trauma with our first. Also, like if you've been here for a while, you know my birth story. And if you saw my recent one-woman show, We Party, #ThisIsMotherhood, you know the gist of what happened. And you can also check out, I'm posting clips on YouTube. It is taking me a little bit of time because I'm tired, but I'm posting clips regularly from the show. So you can check out youtube.com/AlyssaAlter to see clips from the show. And if you're new here, go back and listen to past episodes and definitely catch the recording of We Party, #ThisIsMotherhood. And just like the quick synopsis, I experienced a 4th-degree tear, which is where your vagina tears all the way through and up into my rectum. And my 2 holes became 1. Yes. Yes, that is a Spice Girls song. Yes, that was in the show. Yes, I rewrote the lyrics. Yes, check it out. And then I proceeded to hemorrhage, pass out, vomit, and I don't really know what else during the surgical repair because I was not conscious. But Jeremy was there to witness all of it, holding our son, not knowing what was going on. So clinically speaking, my recovery was smooth, but emotionally and psychologically, it is ongoing. We went into lockdown just a few months after Everett was born. I was later diagnosed with postpartum anxiety and then even a little bit later, post-traumatic stress disorder. And the past 3 years, the creation of this podcast, the creation of the media platform postpartum.com, all of my work and writing have been fueled by my refusal to give into the silence and invisibility of motherhood. Like I've said, I will not suffer in silence again. I only suffer out loud, which again, if you've been here before, if you've been here a while, you already know this. So as I've shared the news that I'm having another baby, I said this at the beginning of this episode, I am so touched and moved by your responses and support. Because after Everett, I felt so alone and invisible. I felt like the Amazon delivery truck. No one ever notices the truck that brought your much needed nipple cream. They only care about the sweet relief of the nipple cream, right? And I'm not trying to discount the sweet relief of a good quality nipple cream. I'm just saying that the Amazon truck is still sitting right there and maybe got a little banged up on the way. And like, maybe we say thank you to the truck, right? But that's not what we do. We don't even think about the truck, right? It's just sitting there. And as soon as I announced my pregnancy, I felt this second pregnancy, after feeling all of that stuff with Everett, I felt more like people were like applauding me, like applauding the Amazon truck coming down the street, like the Wells Fargo wagon in Music Band. Oh, the Wells Fargo wagon is a coming down the street. Oh, don't let it pass my door. But about the Amazon truck, right? This same excitement. I felt like people saw me and asked about me and were considerate of me in this process. And you did that with such kindness and consideration of my story, not the usual invasive, like as soon as you tell someone you're pregnant or they realize you're pregnant, they ask, did it happen naturally? Were you trying? It feels like the next question is going to be like, so was it missionary or doggy style that did the trick, right? I don't know if anyone's actually asked that last one, but please let me know if they did because, but I know that they definitely asked me the first two because, I mean, I'm a mom and I'm pregnant and people ask you that and it feels so bizarre. Anyway, instead, I was getting more responses like, that must have been a difficult decision given your experience. I'm so happy for you. When you're ready, I'd love to hear how you got there. I still feel so traumatized by my experience and I don't know how to move through it. And I know that you felt that way too. I'd love to hear about it. Alyssa, I'm so excited for you to have a different experience this time. Me too. So I want to say thank you for being so kind and gentle with me, for remembering that as much as I speak openly about all these things and I make obviously hilarious and brilliant jokes about it, that I'm still a person who has feelings, who went through this like insane experience that is still true, right? All of these things are true at the same time. And I think that getting pregnant again, right? Whether it's your second pregnancy, your third pregnancy, your fourth pregnancy, however many pregnancies, which is also a different number of children that you may or may not have. But getting pregnant again is something that we do not give enough reverence to. The courage, bravery, strength, and vulnerability it takes to walk back into the fire. And even if you had one of those transcendent, transformative, orgasmic births that Ina Mae Gaskin writes about, it's a huge endeavor, physically, emotionally, psychologically, financially, logistically, energetically, basically all of the Lees that exist, right? And for me, I do feel courageous. I feel really strong and I am really proud of myself because after having Everett, I grieved so much. I grieved not having the birth experience I was supposed to have. I grieved feeling so much pain and anger and fear when all I wanted was to celebrate my dream coming true. I wanted to bask in the magic of Everett and Jeremy and our new family, and I was constantly distracted by my injury and pain. I never said it out loud, but a lot of my grief was that I was afraid to have another baby. I was afraid for a really long time. I thought about not having another baby. I considered packing up that dream of the minimum of 2 children and putting it away, which I know that a lot of people do for many different reasons. And I fully respect that. For me, the idea of not having another baby and not having another baby because of this trauma was as painful as the stitches in my butthole. And if you have never had stitches in your butthole, it's more painful than you think it is. And this is all what inspired episode 26 of the podcast, why we need to stop asking when someone's having another baby. Because every time someone asked me this or made one of those off-ed comments of like, Everett wants a younger sibling or whatever, it broke my heart into a million pieces. Because I wanted that too. I had always dreamed of that, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. I didn't know if I was strong enough to do it. I didn't know if it was going to be possible for me. And since you've asked, and especially because you've asked in ways that feel like one mom reaching out to another mom, even if you're not a mom, and I want to share how I approached this, how I moved through this, and how I've arrived here on the other side of the decision. I haven't given birth yet, so there is still a lot of potential for this shitstorm to rain down on me and drown me, but I also don't think that it will this time. So one of the best things I did was go to therapy every week. I go to therapy, and at one point along the way, I changed therapists because I felt like I wasn't making progress. Not to say that like healing of any sort isn't linear. It's not like I expect every week to be a revelation and like fix something. But I really felt like I was staying trapped in the cycle of my sadness and my trauma. And I just felt like I needed someone else to move through and move with it. I am someone who does not stay stuck. That's a thing I don't do. I keep moving. And so I decided to switch therapists, which ended up being the right decision for me because also not every therapist, it's not that the first one was bad. She met me where I was at and took me where she needed to go. And then I needed someone else. There's nothing wrong with that. And like I said, healing isn't linear. While I always keep moving, I know it's not always going to be forward progress. Do I like that fact? No. Do I accept it? Yes. Right? Healing is more circular and cyclical and non-linear. If you've seen The Good Place, which if you haven't seen The Good Place, watch The Good Place. It's more like a Jeremy Bearimy. And I know this fact from physical injuries, like the knee injury I had from a chorus line, or the ankle foot injury from Holiday Inn, or my back from Guys and Dolls. Emotional and psychological injuries behave similarly in that the recovery isn't linear and it's not always exponential. It takes time, consistency, presence, listening, and care to move through and past an injury. So I gave myself all of those things. I created my own self-care menu, which I have talked about before So I've made it, and then I turned it into a downloadable interactive PDF. Proud of me because tech, like this kind of technology, is not my wheelhouse, which you can download for free at the link in the show notes. This is literally my Alyssa Alter cheat sheet. When I'm feeling sad, anxious, overwhelmed, out of control, or paralyzed by the idea of actually having some time available for myself, this is a cheat sheet or like the Cliff Notes on how I can best take care of me and make myself feel better in an impactful way. It's the list of self-care practices that actually take care of me. So yes, a bath is on my list because baths really do make me feel better. It's not because someone's been marketing bath bombs to me, because we know from episode 10 of the podcast, there is no bath bomb for anxiety. And what I love about my self-care menu, and if you download it, you'll get mine, which you are welcome to use. Sharing is caring. But you also get the interactive PDF to create your own. And my favorite thing about it is that Jeremy knows what's on mine. So he sometimes, like when I'm really drowning, he can suggest, I'm using the bath as the example because it's the first thing that's coming to mind. He can say, why don't you go upstairs and take a bath? And when he says that, I know what he's also saying is like, I see that you're in a tough spot right now. Why don't I take over and you go do this thing that I know makes you feel better, like actually makes you feel better. So it's not like patronizing or anything. It actually feels really good and is helpful. So I created that. Creating that list also inspired me to create my own owner's manual. I first created the owner's manual as a resource for a group program called Move that I ran summer of 2022. This owner's manual is exactly what it sounds like. Okay, when you get a new car or like a dishwasher or a washing machine or even like a freaking like dustbuster, you get a manual that explains how everything works, right? What gas the car likes, when to have these things serviced. And there's also like a glossary for all of these appliances of what all the little lights and symbols mean. So when they turn on to like warn us about something, we know what to do, right? So I wanted one for me because when life happens, like I have all these warning signals too. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know why I'm freaking out. But if I had a manual that could be like, yes, when you behave this way, when you get really yelly, when you don't yell, when you like retreat and are silent, it is indicating that something is off. I wanted the cheat sheet as to how I could help myself when I'm in these heightened situations, right? Like when I start having literally zero boundaries around being on my phone and just scrolling social media, what is that actually telling me about myself? When I feel completely paralyzed and overwhelmed by a decision, what are some key questions that I can ask myself to bring me back into the present moment, to bring me back to my highest priorities, to make decisions that align with my vision, my mission, my goals for my life right now? There are so many things to manage that pull our focus and our energy and distract us from these highest priorities right now, that I created this manual to help myself stay with myself on my track as I actively choose each step of the way. And what I love is going back and updating this. So that's something I'm doing right now. And I have just made this resource, the owner's manual, available for you on my website. I usually sell this for $25, but if you use the code in the show notes, you will get $10 off. Because I love you and we need this. And I think this is really, really important because we never got an owner's manual for ourselves. And if we did, it was probably created by like some colonial, racist, white supremacist guy, colonial guy who has no idea where the clitoris is. And even if we did get one, it needs updating. So I want this resource to be available to you. I want it to be accessible. Check it out and definitely let me know how it goes. But anyway, that's not what this episode is about. I mean, but it is. These are the resources. These are the things that I am doing to get to the point where I could get pregnant again. Because I thought my dream of having 2 children, especially Jeremy's children, wasn't going to come true because, well, first, I thought it was because we were going to break up, that he was going to break up with me, or I was going to break up with him because he wanted no kids. And I wanted a minimum of 2 kids. And then so that was like part one of the dream potentially not coming true. And then part two of the dream not coming true was when Everett was born. And I was so traumatized and so traumatized by it that I thought my dream wasn't going to come true. The dream that I had really committed everything to. Okay, so I went to therapy and I kept going. I created resources for myself to support me, largely because I couldn't find the resources that I need, so I made them. And that's a lot of my work, and the things that I create are from that, right? It's making the things that I was looking for and couldn't find. Or maybe I found a variation, but it really didn't speak to me. And I cannot tell you how much it means to me hearing that these resources and things that I create also resonate with you and speak to you. Okay, so I also saw a total of 4 different physical therapists. The first therapist was someone who I had met in a prenatal Pilates class. She had her baby a few months before me, and I felt connected to her. But it turns out that she also was struggling with her mental health postpartum, and my physical therapy sessions became her therapy sessions, which honestly, for me, caused more harm than good. I mean, it caused more harm. Her clinical care, like treating the muscles, the massage, the exercises she gave me, all of that were definitely high quality. But the experience, I just, again, felt erased and not being considered, and like I wasn't being taken care of. And that left me crying on the street, furious that once again, I wasn't receiving care, that I was being expected to care for someone else when I needed to be taken care of. And it was a boundary. It showed me a boundary that I continuously have to work on with myself, as I love taking care of other people, and I need to allow myself to be taken care of too. So I then saw a beloved physical therapist who actually had moved out of the city, but I saw her virtually, but we weren't seeing anyone in person. And she really helped me rebuild a trust with my body and movement, and definitely helped hone my self-massage skills since she wasn't there to do it. I then went back to in-person PT with another therapist who I love, who really listened to and heard me and treated me. She wasn't distracted by my brilliant, hilarious jokes and just like stellar timing and defensive humor, but instead laughed at all my jokes because she's not dumb, and treated me, the whole human being, and made me feel really safe in our sessions and with my body. I then saw another PT literally because she has an unbelievable, phenomenal, fabulous reputation. And I wanted to hear from yet another professional that my body was healing and in great shape, because it was. And I was catching up emotionally to accept, hold, and trust that this was the case. And that's a whole other part of the healing process, which I've experienced with other physical injuries. And I worked with literally thousands of clients in that same place, working on how to emotionally accept, hold, and trust that we're healing. Because we often find ourselves in that place where technically we're better, but we're not better yet. We're still really fucking scared. And I'm going to take this moment to brag, but she did use this 4th PT who I went to, like literally to just tell me that I'm doing great. She used this device that literally measures the muscle function of both a contraction and a release of my anal sphincters. And she told me that I performed better than the average person who hadn't even been injured. Like, this is like what I was giving was like the goal that everyone, like the gold standard that like most patients don't even reach after an injury. So yeah, I'm bragging. Okay. Like, my sphincters are great. So I feel really proud of that. So thank you for letting me brag. And thank you for celebrating my anal sphincter with me. But remember, this was the physical part of things. And that assurance for her helped me with all of the other stuff that was going on. Besides talk therapy, I also worked with a psychiatrist. So I was on I was on Zoloft for a while. I'm not going to like give you like the medications I took because it's irrelevant, right? Like what's right for me, what's right for you. I'm a doctor of nothing. But I took an SSRI. I also had something for when I was in more acute moments of panic, and sleep was a really big issue. So I had something else to take in the evenings that I had to take a half dose because the first time I took it, I really was like, that is too strong, to help me sleep through the night, to regulate my sleep patterns, to then help me handle the days better, which really did help set things up. And I worked with my psychiatrist, adjusting the doses, and then tapering off when it was appropriate, and then not tapering off when it wasn't appropriate. So, working with both a talk therapist and also a psychiatrist to help me through that. I also explored other modalities. Now, I do want to go ahead and own that the ability to make this choice that I am able to make isn't available to everyone. This is a huge privilege that I have and that I used. I saw 4 different pelvic floor physical therapists. I don't know that any of them some of them straight up didn't take insurance. Some, it was like an out of network, like the whatever. I paid the difference once I met my deductible. And that is something that I was able to do that is not accessible to everyone. So I do want to own that. I also went to acupuncture and saw an acupuncturist who's also a traditional Chinese medicine doctor for anxiety and PTSD, which also for me manifested in some gnarly GI issues. I started receiving Reiki from my friend and Reiki master Megan Sikora, who I hope to have on the show soon. But check her out. She is brilliant. I did tapping sessions, which with D. Sweet Slade, who wrote a phenomenal article over at postpartum.com. I'll include that in the show notes also. This is another anxiety treatment using rhythmic tapping and like repeating words, mantras, inputs, while rhythmically tapping acupressure points. So it connects to different meridians, activating different parts of your brain to help sort of rebalance everything and sort of like rewire the system. I got massages. I explored TRE, which is called trauma and release exercises. I journaled like a madwoman. I told my birth story a gajillion times. I took my medication for anxiety and panic attacks. I adjusted said medications. I raised and lowered doses as needed with my psychiatrist. And I did all of this over the course of 3 years. There was like one big turning point moment that I had with my therapist where the desire to have a second baby was starting to be stronger than my fear. But every time that I thought about birthing another person, I would panic. What I realized in this session with my therapist is that somewhere along the way, a little brain seed had been planted in my brain that the only way that I would know for sure that I had moved through and healed my trauma was with another vaginal birth, a redemption vagina vaginal birth. This was the only way that I would be able to prove to myself that I had healed. I'm giving you a moment. The audio didn't cut out. I'm just like, okay, let's let that be for a second. Yet, every time that I thought about a vaginal birth, I burst into tears, hyperventilated, and it sent me into a panic attack. Now I know what you're thinking. Alyssa, you are the one who always tells me there's no one right way. There's only my right way, right? What the fuck? I know. And as I spoke with my therapist, I realized that this was like a weird double I was finding myself in this weird like alternate universe right in the center of it where I don't believe that. I don't believe that a vaginal birth is better than a C-section. I don't believe anyone has to make birth or feed a baby any one way. I don't believe that the only way to heal from a trauma is to be re-traumatized. I believe there is no one right way. So why was I putting this different other expectation on myself? And I don't have the answer to that question. But seeing it so clearly in this therapy session, I think it was just the way we talked about it and the timing. I was ready to see this and overcome this. It really so clearly made me realize how much that external pressure of a vaginal birth and the idea that there is a right way was affecting me. How much these societal and cultural ideals were keeping me stuck in a loop of anxiety, trauma, and failure. And then, like the Red Sea parting during the Exodus from Egypt, or like the skies opening up, really revealing a double rainbow after a big storm, I saw the land of milk and honey, the land where I walk myself into an operating room, I lay down and stay awake while somebody cuts me open and takes out a baby. The promised land of my elective C-section. Because I don't believe there is one right way. I found my right way because as I cried and snotted all over myself in this therapy session, as I realized that I was holding myself to a harmful, impossible standard, I realized that my right way is making this informed, empowered decision, and everything felt lighter. I started to feel like a thread of excitement about another baby entering this experience. And as I sat with the knowledge that I want a C-section, those threads of excitement started growing into more and more excitement. And I shared this with Jeremy. I asked what he thought. Would he be okay with me having a C-section? And like the freaking dream that he is, his response was, "It is your body, Alyssa. Whatever you need is what we need." And then when I shared that this felt like for me, not just the safest option for me physically and emotionally, but just clearly the only option, the right option, he softened and admitted that made him feel a lot safer too. For us, honoring the traumatic experience that we had means not walking back into that particular fire. It means making a different decision and having a different experience. I'm not naive. I do not think a C-section is easy or without its own challenges. What I do know is that my butthole will have nothing to do with it. The anticipation of going into labor will not haunt me and trigger my PTSD. I will not fear my body or for my body. I will have a different experience. And I know this is my right decision. And listen, I didn't go out and get pregnant the next day. I let this decision be for a little bit. I said it out loud to myself. I wrote it in my journal. I told my closest people first. Then I said it to strangers, then everyone, because I needed to see how all of these different scenarios felt in my body when I said them out loud. Then I wrote them down. I made them tangible, and it all felt really, really good. And it's funny because as I'm saying that, as I did this, saying it to myself, saying it here, writing it in my journal, writing it publicly, saying it to people, I did the exact same thing when I was getting ready to file for divorce. I started telling people I was getting divorced before I told my ex-husband because I was trying it on. I would say it out loud to myself, and then I said it to strangers at the bar or friends of friends to just see what it felt like to say it in the world. And that also felt good. And this feels good. And so again, I want to thank you for your love and support over these past few years as all of this evolved. And it continues to evolve. And I'm excited and appropriately nervous. And most of all, I really can't believe that all of my dreams are coming true. This is everything I ever wanted. And it didn't come easily. It came because of my relentless determination to never settle, to make my own decisions instead of letting them be made for me. They came because I didn't let them not come. I advocated and fought for my dreams and for myself. And so I am now knowingly and courageously walking back into the fire like the badass phoenix that I am, who has proven that she always rises from the ashes. Thank you so much for sharing your precious time with me. I am so happy that you're here. I hope this episode resonated with you and maybe even inspired some insight into the myth of motherhood and how that shows up for you in your life. If you found yourself nodding your head along with this episode thinking, oh my God, did Alyssa read my journal? Or I feel so seen. Or even I'll have what she's having. You can. Check out our incredible community over in the private Facebook group Moms Club and visit me at alyssa-alter.com to download your free guide to the 20 things no one tells you about pregnancy and postpartum. Remember, there is no one right way to be a mother. There is only your right way. See you next week.